Now, before you get started in a 3ds Max project, you will often want to set up your scene so that you have the proper grid spacing, units, and viewports that you want. Now, we can set up units under the Customize menu. So if we go into Customize, you'll see that we have Units Setup. Now, by default, 3ds Max uses generic units, and those are just units that Max applies. If we want, we can go to a metric system here, and we can have our default units be either meters, centimeters, millimeters, or even kilometers. We can also go to US standard measurement, and this will go feet with fractional inches, or we can go decimal inches or feet with decimal inches, and you'll see that we have a number of different options here. And if we go to fractional inches, you'll see that we can have the minimum fraction here down to about 100th. Or we can go to custom units, and you can make your custom unit to be any size in terms of inches, feet, or metric system as well. But I'm going to go ahead and keep this at generic units. And we can also change our units for lighting. We can choose either American or international units for our lights. Now, once we have our units set, we can also do grid spacing. So I'm going to go under Tools, Grids and Snaps, Grids and Snaps Settings. Now, this is used also for snapping, and we have all sorts of different options here for snap. We can snap to grid points or lines. We can also snap to parts of an object, midpoints, tangents, and so on. But what I really want to take a look at is the home grid. Now, the home grid is this grid right here. And we have a standard grid spacing of 10 units, but we can make that bigger or smaller depending upon the scale of your scene. And if you want to, you can actually type in a specific number, and then you can change the number of major lines per grid line. And we can do stuff such as inhibit grid subdivision or perspective view. So if we click this off, you see that the grid actually goes out to the horizon. Sometimes that's a good idea. Other times it just kind of gets in the way. So you'll get to decide that. Now, once we have our grid and snap settings, we'll also want to set up our viewports. Now, we've seen this before. If we go down to the bottom left of the interface, you'll see that we have a number of default layouts. So if we want, we can change the layout for our scene. Now, this can change at any time, but if you're working in a specific type of scene, you may want to use a standard layout. Now, I'm going to go back to a perspective view here. And once you have everything set, you can save out your initial scene. And one of the things you want to do as you work with scenes is to make sure that you do save early and save often. So when we save, obviously you want to go ahead and do a save or a save as. But another thing we can do within 3ds Max is configure automatic backups. And this can be very important. So I'm going to go under Customize Preferences, and we're going to go over to Files. Now down here we have Auto Backup. By default it's enabled, so let's go ahead and leave it that way. And then we can change the number of auto back files and how many minutes between backups. Now if you have a large file, an automatic backup may actually take a little bit of time and it may interrupt your workflow. So you'll need to adjust that backup interval to accommodate for that. But go ahead and try and leave auto backup on just to make sure that you don't lose any data. So those are some of the basics for how to configure scenes in 3ds Max.